Not Nicola Peltz's dad entering the group chat.
So Nicola Peltz's dad has weighed in on the feud that's going on between Brooklyn Beckham and his parents.
So the billionaire finally spoke. And trust me, when the head of the Peltz family breaks his silence, it's never just a comment. It's a calculated move. Because while the Beckham family has been moving in polished silence, smiling at events, posting perfectly filtered family photos, something behind the scenes has been shifting. And now, the calm just cracked. When Nelson Peltz stepped onto the stage at a high-profile finance summit in Palm Ridge, nobody expected Hollywood-level drama to follow him into a room full of billionaires and balance sheets. But then the question dropped. Has your family been in the headlines lately? And suddenly, the air changed. He laughed. He smiled. He said the press does no one any good. But then he added something that sent shockwaves through both empires. My daughter is great. My son-in-law is great. And I look forward to their long, happy marriage. Simple words. Or a power move. Because when Nicola Peltz and Brooklyn Beckham are at the center of a very public family fracture, every sentence becomes strategy. Is this quiet support? Or the beginning of a billionaire-backed showdown? Stay with me. Because this isn't just family drama. This is dynasty versus dynasty. And someone just made their first public move, because here's the thing nobody wants to admit. This didn't start at the finance summit. It didn't start with Nelson Peltz's carefully measured smile. And it definitely didn't start with that single sentence wishing Nicola Peltz and Brooklyn Beckham a long, happy marriage. No. This storm has been brewing for years. Behind velvet curtains. Behind luxury gates. Behind perfectly curated family photos that screamed unity while whispering tension. On one side, you have the Beckham family, a legacy family, built on fame, precision, image control. David Beckham, the global sports legend turned business icon. Victoria Beckham, the fashion mogul who transformed personal branding into a science. Together, they didn't just build wealth. They built a brand, a dynasty, a machine. And then came Nicola Peltz. Not some background girlfriend. Not some passing headline. She was the daughter of Nelson Peltz, architect of the Peltz family. A man whose business decisions move markets before breakfast. A billionaire who doesn't raise his voice because he never has to. Two powerful families. Two different worlds. One marriage. And that's where everything shifted. Because insiders, and yes, we're talking insiders who have watched this unfold from private dinner tables and gated estates, say the tension wasn't about love. It was about control. Brooklyn Beckham had always been the quiet one. The creative. The son who smiled for cameras but never looked fully comfortable inside the frame. Growing up inside the Beckham family meant structure. Strategy. Expectation. Every move planned. Every appearance polished. Every relationship evaluated. So when Brooklyn didn't just fall in love, but committed to Nicola, things reportedly got complicated fast. At first, everything looked perfect. Lavish engagement. Designer outfits. Smiling family photos. A wedding that looked like it belonged in a streaming documentary. But behind that cinematic glow? Whispers. There were rumors about disagreements over wedding planning. About who had final say. About whose name carried more weight on guest lists. About creative differences that were suddenly framed as misunderstandings. Some said it was normal in-law tension. Others said it was something deeper. Because when two empires merge, it's never just about romance. It's about influence. And sources close to the situation claim Brooklyn began pulling away long before the headlines exploded. Less family appearances. Less coordinated branding. More independent projects. More distance. And then came the post. The one that flipped everything. Brooklyn Beckham didn't name names. He didn't throw wild accusations. But he made one thing very clear. He felt controlled for most of his life. Controlled. That word hit like a grenade. Because when you grow up inside a dynasty, control is often disguised as guidance. Protection. Strategy. But to the person inside it? It can feel different. Brooklyn didn't stop there. He implied boundaries had been crossed. That his marriage had been tested. That Nicola had faced disrespect despite attempts to keep peace. And suddenly, the polished Beckham image cracked. Public reaction was immediate. Fans split into camps overnight. Team Dynasty. Team Independence. Comment sections turned into battlefields. Some accused Brooklyn of being manipulated by the Peltz family. Others claimed he was finally stepping out of his parents' shadow. Meanwhile, David and Victoria Beckham? Silent. Not a single public rebuttal. No emotional interview. No cryptic quote. Just calculated stillness. And here's where it gets interesting. Because silence, when you're part of a global dynasty, is rarely accidental. It's strategy. The Beckham family has survived scandals before. Business setbacks. Media speculation. Relentless tabloid cycles. They know how to wait out a storm. But this wasn't an outside attack. This was internal. A son drawing a public line. And then, Nelson Peltz stepped in. Not with aggression. Not with threats. With calm. Which, frankly, might be even more powerful. When asked about the drama, he didn't deny it existed. He didn't dismiss the headlines. He simply repositioned the narrative. My daughter is great. My son-in-law is great. Translation? The Peltz family stands united. No cracks. No hesitation. And for those who understand power dynamics, that statement carried weight. Because now this wasn't just about a young couple navigating family tension. It was about a billionaire publicly reinforcing the marriage at the center of the storm. It was subtle, but it was strategic. Observers began asking questions. Was this protective father energy? Or was this a message? Because when one empire publicly backs a union while the other remains silent, optics shift fast. The narrative changes. Suddenly, Brooklyn and Nicola didn't look isolated. They looked fortified, shielded, supported. And inside elite circles, perception is everything. Since that moment, both sides have moved carefully. The Beckham family continues appearing composed at events. Perfect posture. Controlled smiles. Business as usual. The Peltz family? Quiet confidence. No escalation. No public shots fired. But make no mistake. Underneath that calm surface, something fundamental has changed. Brooklyn Beckham is no longer the quiet son standing in a legendary shadow. He has chosen a side. Chosen a partner. Chosen independence. Publicly. And that kind of move doesn't just affect family dinners. It reshapes power structures. Because at its core, this isn't about social media drama. It's about evolution. About what happens when a legacy family built on unity faces its first visible fracture. About what happens when the next generation refuses to play by the original script. And about what happens when a billionaire father steps into the frame, not loudly, but deliberately. The question now isn't whether tension exists. It's how far this divide really goes. And whether the Beckham family can adapt to a future where control no longer guarantees loyalty. Because when love, ego, legacy, and power collide, someone always loses influence. And in this unfolding saga, we're only seeing the beginning. If you thought the public statements were the real drama, you haven't seen what started circulating behind closed doors. Because while the Beckham family maintained their immaculate silence and the Peltz family projected polished unity, something else began happening quietly. Information leaks. Not official statements. Not press conferences. Whispers. Private staff conversations that somehow reached social circles. Event planners who suddenly remembered awkward moments. Former associates hinting that the fairy tale wedding wasn't as harmonious as it looked on camera. And that's when the narrative exploded. According to multiple sources close to both families, the wedding wasn't just a ceremony. It was a power negotiation. Guest lists reportedly went through endless revisions. Seating arrangements became political strategy. Branding decisions, yes, branding, were treated like corporate mergers. One insider allegedly said, it felt less like a wedding and more like two corporations deciding who gets top billing. And when two empires collide, egos don't just clash. They compete. There were whispers that creative control over the ceremony became a quiet battlefield. Every aesthetic detail scrutinized. Every designer choice dissected. Every speech reviewed. And if that sounds dramatic, remember, this isn't an average family. This is the Beckham family. Image is currency. Optics are everything. Meanwhile, sources claim Nicola Peltz wasn't interested in becoming a background accessory in someone else's legacy. She wanted autonomy. Her own vision. Her own lane. And that's where friction reportedly intensified. Because independence inside a dynasty can feel like rebellion. One alleged insider described a private dinner months before the wedding where tension could be cut with a diamond knife. Smiles were present. Laughter echoed. But underneath, strategic positioning. And then there's the financial speculation. Now let's be clear, nothing has been officially confirmed. But analysts in elite circles started raising eyebrows at subtle shifts. Brooklyn Beckham reportedly began exploring projects outside the Carter brand machine. Creative ventures that didn't carry the family's traditional stamp of approval. Was it coincidence? Or was it separation in motion? Because when heirs start building independent streams, it signals something. Distance. And here's where it gets even more controversial. Anonymous voices began claiming that post-marriage, there were attempts to guide Brooklyn's public narrative back toward the dynasty's controlled image. Joint appearances encouraged. Coordinated messaging suggested. Subtle pressure applied. But instead of aligning, Brooklyn pulled further away. And then came the Instagram post. The one that changed the temperature permanently. Controlled. That word reverberated through media cycles like a siren. Because it reframed everything. Suddenly, past interviews were re-examined. Old body language analyzed. Clips replayed with new context. Was he always hesitant? Was that smile genuine? Was that loyalty or obligation? Public reaction became chaotic. Some accused Nicola Peltz of orchestrating the distance. Gold digger energy, critics screamed online. Others pushed back hard, arguing that labeling a powerful woman manipulative is the oldest trick in the dynasty playbook. Hashtags trended. Fan theories spiraled. Commentators dissected every micro-expression from past family events. And then something even more interesting happened. The financial press started paying attention. Because when Nicola Peltz publicly reinforced the marriage, markets didn't move, but conversations did. Analysts speculated whether this public alignment signaled deeper backing. Not just emotional support, but structural support. What if Brooklyn Beckham isn't just emotionally stepping away from the Beckham family? What if he's building something parallel? Imagine that, an heir to one empire supported by the financial architecture of another. That's not gossip. That's tectonic. And while none of this has been formally acknowledged, strategic insiders note a subtle shift in public positioning. Brooklyn and Nicola appearances? Unified. Intentional. Independent. Beckham family appearances? Controlled. Legacy-driven. Carefully distanced from commentary. The silence from David Beckham and Victoria Beckham continues to dominate headlines. But silence in high-power families is rarely passive. It's calculation. Some insiders believe negotiations are happening privately. Others claim pride is slowing reconciliation. Because let's be honest, when your son publicly implies control, it's not just a parenting critique. It's a brand challenge. The Beckham family has spent decades crafting an image of unity, strength, and precision. This fracture disrupts that narrative. And narrative is everything. Meanwhile, the Peltz family remains steady. No attacks. No counter-accusations. Just subtle reinforcement. And that contrast? It's powerful. Observers are beginning to question whether this is evolving into something much bigger than family tension. Is this the beginning of a generational shift? A symbolic transfer of influence from legacy hierarchy to marital partnership? Or are we witnessing $2 billion ecosystems quietly redrawing boundaries? The speculation doesn't stop there. Elite social circles have noted separate holiday appearances, distinct social calendars, selective event attendance. Nothing overt, but noticeable. And in high society, what's not done often speaks louder than what is. Then came the dinner rumor. An alleged private reconciliation meeting between representatives of both families at a neutral estate outside Palm Ridge. No photos. No confirmations. Just whispers that conversations were measured but tense. Was it peace talks? Or was it damage control? Because make no mistake, public perception is now a battleground. Every smile captured by paparazzi is analyzed. Every absence dissected. Every caption scrutinized for hidden meaning. Brooklyn Beckham's evolution is undeniable. Once the quiet heir, now the outspoken partner. And Nicola Peltz? No longer just the billionaire's daughter. She's being positioned, intentionally or not, as a stabilizing force. A shield. A catalyst. Depending on who you ask. But here's the real twist. Power doesn't collapse overnight. It adapts. If the Beckham family feels influence slipping, they won't explode publicly. They'll recalibrate. Strategically. Which means the most significant moves may not be visible yet. And that's what makes this so compelling. We're not watching a screaming match. We're watching a chess game. Between legacy and independence. Between parental structure and marital alliance. Between dynasty and empire. And the board is still in play. The real question isn't whether tension exists. It's who controls the next move. Because in high-power families, loyalty isn't just emotional. It's structural. And once that structure shifts, everything changes. Oh, you thought this was just about awkward dinners and cryptic Instagram captions? No. This is where it gets dangerous. Because when legacy families feel a shift in power, they don't panic publicly. They reposition. Quietly. And that's exactly what seems to be happening now. Behind the polished smiles and business-as-usual appearances, insiders say something has changed inside the Beckham family. Not chaos. Not collapse. But recalibration. David Beckham has reportedly doubled down on legacy-driven projects. High-profile partnerships. Strategic public appearances. A renewed emphasis on family unity messaging, just without directly mentioning Brooklyn Beckham. Subtle. But intentional. Victoria Beckham, meanwhile, has leaned even harder into her fashion empire. Global showcases. Elite collaborations. Interviews carefully centered around resilience, reinvention, and strength. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe this is narrative reinforcement. Because when a public fracture threatens the image of a dynasty, the response isn't emotional. It's structural. But here's where the tension thickens. Brooklyn hasn't backed down. If anything, has become more visibly aligned with Nicola Peltz. Joint appearances now feel deliberate. Coordinated. Unified. Not forced. Not defensive. Strategic. Observers say their body language tells a different story than before. Less obligation, more certainty. And that certainty? It sends a message. He's not wavering. Now let's talk about the financial ripple effects, because power families never operate purely on emotion. Speculation inside elite investment circles suggests that if Brooklyn continues building independent ventures supported by the Peltz family's infrastructure, it could symbolically weaken the perception of the Beckham family's internal cohesion. Not financially catastrophic, but symbolically disruptive. And symbolism is currency at that level. Imagine being raised inside a brand built on unity and then choosing autonomy in full public view. That's not just personal growth. That's a generational pivot. And pivots make investors nervous. Not because of numbers, because of narrative. A fractured narrative can affect partnerships, endorsements, future collaborations. And that's where things could escalate. Some insiders whisper that quiet mediators have been involved. High-profile advisors known for navigating legacy family disputes. Not lawyers. Not yet. But strategists. Because if this divide becomes permanent, succession dynamics change. Public alliances shift. And the Beckham family's future branding must adapt to a reality where Brooklyn is no longer the central air figure. Now here's the twist nobody is talking about loudly. What if this isn't a war? What if this is evolution? Because dynasties that survive generations don't crush independence. They absorb it. They restructure around it. And maybe, just maybe, David and Victoria Beckham understand that pushing back publicly would only solidify Brooklyn's stance further. So silence becomes power. Let the headlines burn out. Let the public pick sides. Time does what time always does. But here's the countermove. Nelson Peltz didn't raise a passive empire. His statement wasn't dramatic, but it was firm. My daughter is great. My son-in-law is great. That's alignment. That's reinforcement. And in billionaire language, that's a stake in the ground. If reconciliation happens, it will be private, strategic, controlled. But if it doesn't, we may be witnessing the birth of something unprecedented. A parallel legacy. Brooklyn Beckham stepping out of the Beckham family shadow and co-creating a new brand identity with Nicola Peltz, backed by Peltz resources, Peltz strategy, Peltz influence. Two empires. Not merged, but orbiting each other cautiously. The public, of course, continues dissecting every detail. Why did Brooklyn skip that event? Why did Victoria post that quote about strength? Why did Nicola like that subtle comment about independence? Social media has become a battlefield of interpretation. And in the age of digital scrutiny, silence doesn't mute noise. It amplifies it. Some fans still hope for a grand reconciliation photo, a holiday gathering, a symbolic handshake. Others believe the space between them has stretched too far. But here's what makes this saga so compelling. Nobody is behaving recklessly. No screaming interviews. No public attacks. No explosive tell-alls. Just precision. And precision in high-power environments is far more intimidating than chaos. Because chaos burns fast. Strategy lasts. If this evolves into a permanent shift, it won't look dramatic. It will look gradual. Fewer joint ventures. Independent branding. Carefully separated public narratives. And eventually, normalization. The Beckham family redefines itself. The Peltz family expands its influence. Brooklyn and Nicola become the architects of their own orbit. And the world moves on, unaware that it just witnessed a generational power transition. But we're not there yet. Right now, tension still hums beneath the surface. Trust takes time to rebuild. And pride? Pride moves slowly. The next move could be subtle. A shared appearance. A private family gathering that quietly leaks. Or it could be silence that stretches so long it becomes permanent distance. Either way, something fundamental has shifted. Brooklyn Beckham is no longer just the son of a dynasty. He's a decision maker. Nicola Peltz is no longer just the billionaire's daughter. She's positioned at the center of a legacy crossroads. David and Victoria Beckham aren't losing control. They are adjusting to a reality where control looks different. And Nelson Peltz? He's made it clear where he stands. So the real question isn't who's winning. It's who adapts faster. Because in the world of empires, adaptation is survival. And in this unfolding saga of loyalty, power, marriage, and independence, the final chapter hasn't been written. But make no mistake, history is shifting. Quietly, strategically, and we're watching it happen in real time. And now, the real question. Was this ever just family drama? Or did we just witness the beginning of a silent power shift between the Beckham family and the Peltz family? Because when a dynasty built on control meets a billionaire-backed marriage built on independence, something has to give. So what do you think? Is Brooklyn Beckham bravely stepping out of a shadow that was always too big for him? Or is the Peltz family quietly strengthening its influence through loyalty and timing? Is the Beckham family staying silent because they are classy, or because they are calculating their next move? Drop your thoughts below. But don't play safe. Pick a side. Team Dynasty or Team Independence? And here's the twist. What if reconciliation is already happening behind closed doors? What if the real story isn't conflict, but negotiation? Because remember, the most powerful families don't fight loudly. They move strategically. If this story shocked you, wait until the next chapter unfolds. Because in worlds built on legacy, pride, and billions, nothing ever ends quietly. Hit that like button if you believe there's more going on behind the scenes. Subscribe if you want the next update before the headlines catch up. And turn on notifications, because when empires shift, it doesn't trend immediately. It erupts. This isn't just gossip. This is dynasty politics. And trust me, we're not done watching.